I'd like to call to order the Middletown City Council special meeting for Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. If we could start with a moment of meditation, please, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Skank, you please call the roll. Oh, wait, before that, I make a motion to excuse Mr. Muterspaw from this meeting.
Second.
Can you please call the roll for that?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes. And can you please call the roll for the meeting?
Mrs. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Moon?
Here.
Mayor Condrey?
Here.
Mr. Farrell?
Here.
Do we have a motion to receive and file the special meeting documents for this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Skank, you please call the roll.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Okay, so we've called this meeting to discuss the use of ARPA and other funds as they relate to the community center and the senior center. Mr. Lawley, are you going to be kicking this meeting off with some staff discussions?
Assistant City Manager Nathan Cahall will take the lead on it.
Okay, and just as a reminder to citizens, these workshops are of course open to the public because we want everyone to hear discussions of council. We don't have citizen comments during the workshops. However, if you have a comment that you'd like to make to council, at 5:30 we start our regular meeting, and so you can fill out a comment card and then speak during the citizen comments for 4 minutes at the actual council meeting. Mr. Cahall.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So we're here this afternoon, and appreciate council fitting us into your folks' busy schedule. So we're at kind of a decision point, an inflection point on the community center project. As council's aware, our planned dual project with the school district just couldn't get across the finish line, and so we're here today to discuss with you some options. As we look towards how to move forward with a project at the site. So I think what's really helpful before we get into some of these slides today is just to see where we're at in terms of minimum amount of resources for the community center and what our maximum threshold might be. So council had previously committed $2.1 million of ARPA dollars towards the project, up to 2.6 if a gym was included or something along those lines. We originally also secured $1.5 million from Butler County in support of the project, and we have confirmed with them that is still a firm commitment, even though the scope of the project may change, obviously. There's $300,000 that was allocated in a previous state capital budget. And then, so right there, we're at a minimum level, if council still stays with its 2.1 million commitment, at a budget of about 3.9 million. Maybe up to 4.5 if that, or 4.4 if that additional $500,000, that 2.6 we're taking into account. Recently, as council knows as well, the Butler County Commissioners have allocated an additional $2 million of their ARPA funds to Middletown and also a similar amount of money to some other jurisdictions here in the county. And it appears that this project would qualify within those parameters that they've established for those extra dollars. Now, it's obviously at your discretion as to whether to use some of it, none of it, all of it towards this project or to something else. If you add that $2 million to it, we're looking at a budget number of about 6.4 million on the high side, or 5.9 on the low side, if you were to allocate the full 2 million. So as we look at this, a minimal budget, assuming council still sticks with its commitment towards the project, we're looking at a project budget of about 3.9 million. On the high end, we're at about 6.4. So there's a lot at play here. If we move to the slides, I think just pictorially, I think this will pretty much help. So the next couple slides, and I think our partnering architect firm, Brain Center Carroll, they've called these priorities, but I want to make sure that there's no misconception that in terms of the prioritization, the numbering there is more of think of them as options or priorities of, hey, here's the amount of what's perceived as largest amount of utility or square footage for the price. So we have a rundown of 5 components that could be included as part of the project. Does not look as if we have enough money for all of them, and that's really, I think, the discussion we're looking for this evening, or this late afternoon, I should say, to get guidance from this body as to how you wish to proceed. So let's start with option 1, or component number 1 there shown on the screen in red, and that's an addition of a new full-size gym and some related extra square footage off the community room space, and also the addition of an elevator that would take you up to the 2nd floor and meet some ADA requirements. I'm going to throw around some ballpark numbers. These may ebb or flow by 5% or so when we would eventually bid. But that red area you see on the screen there, that would be about a $4 million price tag. That eats into whether it's the 3.9 minimum, which that's probably about all you could do, or if we go up to the 6.4. Priority number 2, which has been expressed by CBI as our tenant and operator of the center, is a very key component, is what's shown as priority number 2, and that's the expansion of what we've always called as the family zone, the family area, which would help in their programming, their activities, and would position them, I think, to garner some extra programs in the future. So that part of the existing facility that you see there is that metal, I'll call lean-to structure that it added on maybe, 30-some years ago. Now these are a little bit out of order, but that priority 2 is around $800,000.
Does that include any furnishings, or is that just?
That is some minimal furnishings upgrading. Obviously interior fit out wouldn't include things like maybe furniture, or those kinds of things. Desks, hardware. If we move now onto this screen, which is shown as priority 5, which is really just a comprehensive remodel, refresh. We're talking all new finishes, probably some minor demolition and reconfiguration of some of the office and room space. That's about an $800,000 price tag as well. And I think when we talk about this a little bit more, I think we'll try to figure out what's our best bang for the buck. If you go to the next slide, if you would be so kind, yes, we get to what's deemed priority number 4, but this may be out of order. So that's updating and renovating the upstairs gym. Now, as all of you know, been there a time or two, this is a diminutive sized gym. It's not regulation. Is it the bee's knees right now? No, but it is some functional programming space. Could be left as is, but a redo that was originally envisioned as part of the previous project scope, that's about a $500,000 price tag. You'll see the residual of the first option there in red. That's more just some renovation and an expansion space related to the elevator and some other things. And then finally, the last slide I think will show what's shown here is maybe priority 3, but if we were to add square footage to the facility, I think it's very important, at least staff does, and our consultant, that the exterior of the building start to match the old with the new to a certain extent. And so this priority 5, which is, or priority 3, I'm sorry, which is about a $500,000 price tag, would be making certain facade modifications and improvements to the exterior of the building to match expansion space, whether that's priorities 1 or 2 or the like. So with all that said, if we're like, okay, let's bottom line it here, staff, if we're 16, 26. So we're looking at all in probably about $6.6 million. And there is obviously some bidding and price volatility. We do have some design costs that we still have to eat. So really the question is that, and I think what staff's asking, if you're amenable to this afternoon or later on, is maybe to provide staff with some guidance as to, off this buffet list, what are your priorities, or what do you see as the best bang for the buck? Ultimately, that first starts with establishing what you want the project budget to be, and then moving from there. So it looks like that's a two-step question. One is, are the current or the previously committed dollars, are they still on the table? Most specifically, what level of city ARPA dollars is still on the table in your folks' minds? And then the delta, the second question, that's the biggest differential, is that what, if any, of that that new $2 million from the county would you deem appropriate to program for this project? I realize there's a lot to take into account. I see Mr. Moon frantically hitting the calculator over there. This is a lot to digest and the like, but this is very this is seen as something that could be a very impactful project for our city, for our community. But we obviously need guidance from you fine folks.
Can I start off with a couple questions? First thing would be, so the family center add-on per se, that's $800,000. Now, a part of that money was the community foundation had set aside funds if we were to build that, correct?
I don't know if Verlina is, there she is. She may have some better commentary on that one. I think there was, in my mind, I don't recall whether that was for construction costs or that was more for programming or fit out and finishing of that area. I would defer to Ms. Stewart on that one.
So, my recollection is the community foundation dedicated.
Yeah. Thank you, Verlina.
My recollection is the community foundation targeted or earmarked $300,000 for the family zone, and it was used, that money was supposed to be used both for the programming as well as some of this construction within the building. So not the exterior at all, but what needed to happen to create the spaces needed for the family zone. So there would be certain spaces within that L-shaped area, a SEL space, a reading center, a video center, those type activities. So the $300,000 is earmarked for that. My last conversation with the Community Foundation was that they are still on board and would honor that commitment.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, the reason that money is going towards programming as opposed to hard construction costs is because they're limited in the way that they can give money to a project like this. Yeah?
Correct.
Okay.
And they wanted it specifically to go towards a literacy center.
Okay.
But a part of that is construction costs, so just can't
In-
do all of it.
Yeah.
Interior to build.
Okay,
I knew there was some limitation to the amount of money that
Yeah,
they
yeah,
could give for construction costs.
Right, so
Okay.
you understand what I'm saying, interior?
Yeah, 100%. I just wanted to confirm. Yep, okay, thank you.
Verlina, before you walk away, we would obviously need a literacy center in there since there won't be a preschool there now. Any comments from your perspective on that possibility, given the space and?
So two things. I think, if the literacy center is absolutely needed. That space will be used for playgroup activities, which could mirror very closely to what you would see inside a preschool. Should for some reason that space become available where it could still be used as a preschool, I am positive that could happen, if that's your question.
Yeah, well, I wanted to make sure a literacy component could be offered at the center, since there wasn't going to be a preschool, to meet their requirement that there be a literacy-based.
It will absolutely be a literacy center.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've already, Sarah, who is over the Community Foundation, Karen Schaefer, who manages the Ready Dollars, we have already had conversations about what that literacy center will look like and the type of programming that will happen.
And then I have a question. I'm not sure if, Nathan, if this is something that you all have discussed, but I guess just in trying to think a little outside the box here with new build construction, and that is always going to be something that's pretty expensive, and if the priority number one is the gym, is there a way that family zone could exist in the old gym space to repurpose that and to avoid the new construction requirement for the family center? And I'm just trying to think if there are any other ways we could.
Yeah, I think it's a balancing act. I don't want to speak for CBI unilaterally. It's a balancing act in terms of kind of the internal flow within the building. Obviously, that's a little more isolated, kind of in a vacuum area of the building, not necessarily the best in terms of accessibility. And keep in mind that that's not total new build space. That's actually existing square footage. It's just semi-unfinished.
Okay.
Or at least to the level that it would need to be. So I see that more as like kind of a hybrid of between renovation and new construction.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say thinking long-term, because we have to kind of get behind just the construction piece of it and think about what's going to happen post-construction, what operations will look like, what the programs will look like. And it would, in my opinion, best be served to have separate spaces so that you can provide literacy-centered activities for preschoolers in a safe space where there are not other teenagers and adults going into that space. And long-term, we would have K through 12 activities in the other spaces. And if you've been to the center before, and I think most of you have, it feels like there's adequate space in there, but when you start bringing kids in and separating them into specific activities, that space swallows up really quickly. So I think it's important that we think about the long-term activities that could potentially take place in the community center and how that will work with integrating the different ages. You want to keep preschoolers in a safe place separate from the other kids,
Corralled.
so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, and I'll say one more thing and then I'll quit talking. So we have currently, let's say the city didn't give $1 of its own money, or the new $2 million. So we currently have from the county and from the state committed $1.8 million, correct?
That is
Yes.
Okay. And then, so the cost of the remodel, so which is priority what, 2, I think it was? So priority 2 is 800,000. I'm just trying to make sure I'm tracking correctly.
Yes, sir.
And then the remodel of the gym is 500,000. Okay, so that puts us at 1.3. And then if we did the family room add-on, that puts us at 2.1. So if I'm tracking there, right there we have 2.1. And from county and state, we have 1.8 committed. So we have a shortfall of about 300,000.
Yeah, and these prices too, keeping them out, there are some soft costs and some design costs. So yeah.
I guess I say that, so if we still have the Middletown Community Foundation commitment of around 300,000. So we can basically net even without the city investment. We can remodel the gym, remodel the inside, and do the family room addition. So basically where we're looking at, in my opinion, because I feel like those 3 things have to happen. We are in a sense of, does the city give its 2.1 million plus the extra $500,000 plus the extra county money that just came through recently in order to build the $4 million gym plus priority number 3 is how much money?
About $500,000, and that can be scaled up or down.
So really, the gym that's 4 million is probably closer to 4.5 because of the extra infrastructure we have to do on the outside. So the question is, in my mind, right?
I see where you're coming from, yeah.
So, and I'm not saying one way or another right now, but I guess just laying my groundwork of where I'm at. Do we use the $4.5 million, spend it all on this, or do we try to scatter that through the rest of the city? So that's kind of, I feel like there are things that we have to do and then things that we want to do, which is honestly where this conversation's been for the last year for anybody that's on that board. And so that's kind of my groundwork, and I'd be interested in hearing everybody else's opinions.
Two-part question. At the last meeting, we kind of said, if we didn't have our 2.1 million in the community center, we don't have the county money and we don't have the state money. Is that correct?
We never said that, I don't think.
I'll have to verify that. I mean, it's going to be a question for the county.
Yeah.
Obviously, the original 1.5 was one of the conditions in our sub-recipient grant agreement was that we were bringing X amount of dollars towards the project as well.
Yeah. I think if I were a county commissioner, I'd have a lot of questions about just leaving that money in without any of the original money. So for me, I'm leaving the 2.1 in, and then I'm adding the 1.5 from the county and the state, 300,000. Second part question is, I thought the ad alternate for the gym was 3 million, not 4 million.
It is. That was the area that you're seeing in red, and Phil from Branstad or Carroll's here to correct me if I'm going left of center. What you're showing there is more than just the gym. It's also the addition of that elevator for building code and ADA compliance and a little bit of extra space that would have been part of the gym. The gym in and of itself was, yes, you're right, about 3.3, but then there was some extra costs there with the elevator and stuff that has to be added if, to connect that space.
Okay.
That space was going to be, that connecting vestibule
gonna be
area
there anyway.
was going to be there regardless if the gym was part of the project or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'm definitely still, all in on committing the 2.1 that we talked about. I think we committed to the project because we think it's worthwhile, and I don't plan on going back on that. So to me, the question is, how do we accomplish the project, and do we want to put more towards it or not, and what is the priority? And so that comes, like, my next question is, whose priorities are these? Like, who came up with the priority list? Like, and is it actually priority number 1? Like, that's the most important priority?
Once again, they're not priorities.
Okay,
Per
I missed
se,
it.
they're options.
Okay.
So we wanted to give council all the options that we felt are out there that could be accomplished with the ARPA dollars we have already committed to the project and what we have received additionally from Butler County in the last couple weeks.
It's just most expensive to least expensive, correct?
What's that?
Priority 1 is the most expensive. Priority 2, second most expensive.
No, I don't think so, because 5 is 800,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, once again,
So really
these are
priority
options and those are the costs that go with the options.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there a priority list from, like, CVI, for example, who's, like, if we were to cut anything, what they would recommend? I just know I'm not the one
I
operating
don't want to
every
speak
day,
for
and-
Verlina. Verlina, are you prepared to answer that, or?
If I could
No
say this on your
pressure.
way up too, not to interrupt, but this puts us back in the same spot that we were at before the schools were here. That literally the gap is the same for the city. So this nothing has fixed itself on our end. We still have the same problem we had before.
But it's not
The
as
amount of- But the
expensive.
amount of money that we got from the county has changed. So that's
But that's
sort of
to be
changed our
spread
finance.
throughout the community. And
We're
this-
also not building a preschool now.
Not necessarily is
Yeah,
it
but
supposed to
but
be
the
spread
schools-
throughout the community. We can spend it on what we see necessary for the underserved. I mean, there's no stipulation
tied
that
to
we
anything.
spend it
Right.
downtown, East End, West End. It's essentially by what we deem as the important projects.
Sorry.
I just wanted to answer your question. So CBI, we have not been involved per se with the construction component of this project. So
Okay.
I'm looking at it, besides the conversations we previously had with the committee, I'm looking at it for the first time as well. We want the project done at some level, clearly. We want spaces to be adequate to serve all of the youth that will potentially be in the building. My hope is this go around that we do not get caught up in a lot of conversation with trying to come up with additional funds and not doing anything and spending. So it is CBI's position that we are going to provide programming around whatever this project ends up structurally looking like. My hope is that the space is adequate to serve all of the kids. And I don't know, for some of you, it may require a visit to the community center just to get a up close and personal look at what the space looks like when kids are in it, because it fills up very quickly. And what I would not be happy with is ending up with a community center that's not functional for the purposes that we need. So as you're considering this, let's just consider that we need to have an end project that's really something we can use and accommodate the kids, and they have adequate space to have a variety of activities. CBI, we would be happy to participate in the conversation of what that programming will look like whenever we can get to the point that we can land on some of the design.
One thing, and this isn't necessarily for you, Valina, but one thing I've always kind of been battling with through these last 2 years is it feels like my perspective is we need more space. We need more community space. And so that's what I keep coming back to as I sit here and I run all these numbers. Like, how do we get more space for the community? How do we get more space for the kids? And then we have this massive gap, because if you add up everything other than the gym, we're at 2.1 million, which is what we originally put in. It doesn't count the county, it doesn't count the state, it doesn't count the community center. So we have this chasm. And so and I don't know enough about what the exterior building improvements, option 3, the exterior improvements would be, and I'm not all that familiar with the gym upstairs. If you take everything out, if you take those 2 options out and you're left with the gym, the family zone, and the internal remodel, which I think has to happen, I think we're at 5.7 million. If you took the city money and you added the 500,000 in and you took half of what the county offered, we're at 5.7 million. Not saying that's where I am, I'm just saying that's a way to get 90% of the way. But I would need somebody maybe to define, like, what is the outside improvements? Because I think the outside does need an improvement, but I don't know what that means.
And
Anybody?
the gym is critical at what, bells and whistles gym, I don't know, but the additional space is absolutely
That's what I
needed,
keep
because within the square footage of the existing community center, it is not enough space. If we remodel it and end up with the same thing we have, just new paint and floors, it is not going to be adequate for really good programming and lots of youth. So just consider that.
And I think as we have this conversation about space, and the reason that we added the senior center to part of what we wanted to talk about today is that there is a bunch of space at the community center that they've struggled to, I think, maybe utilize fully, because they were trying to put new programming in there and they were trying to find new ways to make it more relevant for the seniors. And so I guess I just wonder what that plays into the conversation. Like, could there be some programming for youth at the senior center, at what was the existing senior center, in any kind of way to create more space? I'm just asking to see if that's part of the conversation.
Is there, so, of course, this has been going through my mind as well, and now I'm almost gonna flip it and say, is there a way that we can create programming for the seniors at the community center, recognizing that the seniors use it during the daytime hours, and I think for the most part, our youth are using it after school? Is that kind of accurate?
Well, maybe during the school year, that's accurate.
Yeah.
during the summer.
probably
in the
not.
off-season,
Right,
it's
right.
a whole different story. And, you know, we've discussed this internally, and while theoretically we think, you know, it's an option, the practicality of mixing the seniors with the younger age isn't practical. We're worried it just won't work.
For what reasons?
Well, there's you know, the age gap of trying to marry both of them together because there'll be overlaps. Children running around our senior citizens create safety hazards that I'm not saying we always have to separate them, but there's just, you know, once again, sitting around in a room discussing it with individuals who deal with the seniors and deal with the kids, it's a tough blend that, once again, theoretically it sounds like a good idea, but when you look at it practically, probably isn't such a good idea for those reasons.
And I think Jackie, because Jackie's been our sort of feet on the ground at the senior center. So I don't know if you have something that you wanted to contribute to that conversation. I just want to make sure that as we're having this discussion, that we're really discussing all of the different options that people might be thinking about and the questions that they might have about how we can best utilize all of this space.
Thank you. I think it makes sense to say we need space and we got space, right? So it kind of makes sense to have that conversation, but these are two totally different populations that really and truly need two separate kind of, decisions of how we do it. And I think, although we have space out there, I don't think that space is conducive to kids. We would probably have to remodel that whole space. That space at Central Connections was really made to be a senior space, event center, facility, food space, and then office space. So it's really no open space per se for the kids. So they wouldn't be able to be combined. When I said it's a tripping hazard, I was just kidding, but
What about older children? I mean, we're talking
Right.
about younger children and older people, but, you know, is there that middle age group that could in some way have some functionality at that center with that space? I don't, you know.
and I think we can do programming, combine programming with mixed ages. I think that makes sense, but normally ownership of a space needs to be planned out and well maintained. It just can't. But I would love for older kids to come out and help seniors learn computer, and then younger kids being able to be read by seniors, right? But usually seniors, when they go out there, and you would need to get feedback from the community, they love coming out in their space, and they love coming out without the noise and the confusion of kids.
Children.
I think they would be very unhappy with the kids there.
I think it would be a very bad idea to try to blend the
Yeah.
seniors and the kids. The kids just have a tremendous amount of energy. They have a tremendous amount of volume. They run, they yell, they play basketball.
I mean, I don't know that we're talking about putting them in the same rooms necessarily. I'm thinking facilities and expenses on
When you
facilities.
look at both facilities, I think what Jackie's saying and what I'm, so take a trip with me, if you will, to the community center. You come in the door, so it looks like it's this massive building, but you have the all-purpose room, which is really conducive for eating, and you could put some round tables in there and do some academics, but it's mostly for the food space. We have our game room, which kids are gonna be in there playing the games, and then you have the gym space. That is all the space, really, that you have at the community center. You have a computer space right now for adults that we no longer let the kids into that space unless they are working on the computers, so they're not in there playing or jumping or any of those activities. There's some small office spaces, and then there was a preschool in there at the other end up until they had to move due to the construction. The senior center is set up in that same way in terms of very dedicated space for very specific things. Kids need room to run and play and do organized activities. And when you bring the two together, I think it's just not going to blend well. We have adult staff who are like, the kids are being too noisy. They're hearing a ball constantly, right? They're playing basketball, they're running, they're playing dodgeball or whatever. So unless the spaces were changed, as Jackie said, some type of renovation where they could both go have separate activities and bring some activities together. And then we're looking at renovations then happening at both spaces. During the summer, summer programming is from 10 to 4. So they take all of the space, the youth. So it would just be, somebody would have to
So there
adjust
is a
the
little bit
name.
of adult programming happening at the community center, but
Recreation.
not when it's typically happening when the kids are not around during the daytime and that sort of thing.
Or in the evening, and it's recreation, so adult volleyball,
Okay.
adult basketball. So it's still that energy. It's not the seniors playing cards or, more quiet type activities.
And I would just think
Silver
gradients,
sneakers with-
stairs, all of the safety features that you would want for kids become different for adults. You know what I mean? Handrails, bathrooms, different chairs. You need chairs that are sturdier and taller. I don't know how many people can get really low. And then with kids, they need lower chairs. I mean, we would just need to outfit it completely different. Not saying it couldn't be done, but it would be a whole different ballgame to really come up with a plan that can be conducive for it to be a functional center for seniors and children. And Mr. Cahill and I went and talked with another center that was a adult recreation center and a senior center, and they said it's like the Great Divide, and this is in a place
Even
like
with adult recreation and
Yes,
seniors.
yeah, and they said it's like the Great Divide, and that's even adult recreation and senior recreation. They don't cross, they completely, so it's kind of hard, maybe it's mentality too. It's kind of hard to kind of blend things unless you're really making sure that Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Tuesday and Thursdays, 8 to 12, 4 to 8, you know what I mean? You have to get really good creative programming to try to right now combine these, two centers. But it makes sense, let's pay for just one center and do everything there, but in concept. But I don't think it would be a wise idea right now. And then we can hear from the people that would, think about that. I just don't think they would be, to me, I don't think it would work really well.
So comment and a question, speaking on space. Since we do own both spaces, and we're trying to figure out how to get more space at the community center, we don't necessarily need conversation on it, just throwing it out there. But if there's any way to maybe offsite some of the CBI offices that are not there serving day-to-day, maybe to
Correct.
some
And we've discussed that with
Okay.
Verlena and some other organizations that may play out. Just to give you on that, we've closed on the community center, or excuse me, the
Seniors.
Central Connection Senior Citizen Center. We now officially own that. I am convening a task force of local business and community leaders that will begin meeting next Monday to explore what we can do with the Senior Citizen Center. The end game is to get the city out of that. How that's going to look, hopefully, we'll be able to determine by doing such as if the task force recommends we put out RFP on who can come in and do some revenue enhancement in the place to make it profitable. So there's a lot to remain there, and part of it could be CBI having offices there and maybe some other organizations having offices there. Why revenue enhancing the space, such as the kitchen and the meeting rooms for various events.
And that could be at either of the two buildings,
That is correct,
not necessarily, okay.
right?
And then my question was, back to the original point, can we get some definition on what the exterior improvements is? Is that paint or?
No, I'll defer
What
to
is-
Phil
what
with
is that?
Brandstetter. He'll be able to answer so much better.
Those exterior improvements would include what was originally bid, so there's portions of metal panel, repainting, new windows, new trim, new signage, and then an additional skylight piece that went on top of that gymnasium. So really to enhance the current aesthetic that's there now.
Is, in our consent agenda tonight, there's appointment of Antoinette Coleman to the position of part-time administrative assistant in the city manager department, and I think that was referenced in association with the senior center. Can you explain that?
Yeah, there's a staffing need there to have somebody present on a part-time basis to kind of spell some existing staff that we've flexed over to the center. And so the department that's coming out of, that's just a placeholder, just to pick a department, but that's what that position is basically just to have a building attendant there that can help
Open and close.
open and close, help
And
set
do
up
some servicing
rooms.
during the day.
Yeah, and the like.
Had we talked about doing that on a contract basis so that we didn't have to offer an employment to,
Once again, that's something I think we're going to look at in the future.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm not.
but
I'm
adding
not
them as a
fan of
part,
that.
yeah.
I don't like, that was never in the plans. I don't really like hiring someone for that role. I feel like we're starting to get into the business of running a senior center by hiring someone. I was kind
But
of.
we feel that, we can absorb it within the budget and make sure we have somebody there to operate the programs we are going to continue to offer.
Yeah, I'd rather see the budget line items go somewhere else on that one. But back to the community center, what is happening to the old gym? So there's a request to spend $500,000 on the old gym for what purpose?
Yeah, if we go back to one of the previous slides, I think.
Because we're looking at $4 million for a new gym, $500,000 for the old gym.
Yeah, so now we got to go the other direction. Okay, so let's go in between. Let's do the Goldilocks slide. There we go. So this is, as you know, we have the upstairs gym, kind of a story and a half above. It's not regulation size. It's got those bleachers that are installed all as one system. So this renovation would, and Phil, you tell me if I'm missing anything, but it would be a new court, some refresh of the bleachers. Trying to think, there's some other things there that I'm totally missing. Some new fixtures and appurtenances, but
New flooring, new fixtures, basketball goal, repairs and refurbishment to the bleacher systems, and also the HVAC system that's up there. Right now, it's just currently heat.
yeah.
And then exhaust fans for ventilation in the summer.
So in theory, that could be struck from the plan pretty easily. I mean, if we're building a $4 million gym, I don't spending another $500,000 to renovate one that's functioning. I know it's not perfect, but that seems like the first thing I would strike.
I think, Mary, you hit upon that. At least if you were to ask staff internally, we would say that priority option number 4 is probably lowest on the totem pole of everything. If you were going to say, hey, what's our biggest bang for the buck? Because you're facing a project here, some options where I think we all agree we're trying to strive towards what's the longest generational impact for this facility and for our options going forward. If we're going to spend some ARPA dollars and the county's been so generous or whatnot, let's do something that's lasting, that's impactful. And so, it's a tough task to decide what the right thing is, but if we had to rank order them, that would be last of these 5.
Nathan, is there any cost savings to doing this project while all of the other construction is going on, though? Like, is there value in, integrating this HVAC system improvement with the rest of the HVAC system and the new gym and everything else? I mean, if they fundraised, let's say the city decided that they didn't want to spend that extra $500,000 and they're trying to figure out how not to allocate more funds, what would it cost them more than $500,000 to fundraise and do that project independently?
No, I mean that I don't want to speak too technically here, but let's take the upstairs gym area. That's kind of a one-off transaction type of remodel and the like. It would be more connecting it to the existing HVAC system, maybe upsizing some of the air handling and the like. You're not, some of the savings that we're also showing in the existing building area is that the elimination of the new classroom space and all that extra, the school district space there too, really reduces the scope and scale of some of our mechanical electric and plumbing needs across the existing facility as well. There's not the need to upgrade and upsize some of the things that were originally envisioned as a larger scoped project.
Okay.
Do we have any CDBG funds available for any of this?
Not to my understanding, Mayor. We do have some operations dollars that were programmed as part of the 5-year plan that are provided to CBI for, I forget which program, that's escaping my brain at the moment. But
Yeah, I
in
wouldn't want
terms
to
of,
pull from programming stuff.
yeah.
Now, where would you see us filling the gap if it's staff's recommendation to go forward with all of this? Where
No,
does that
it's not our
go?
recommendation to go forward with all of this. I want to be clear. Yes, if you folks are looking to be really generous, yes. But I think our hope, our recommendation this evening or this afternoon was to, if you establish whatever your budget is, what are the 3 or 4 items, 3 or 4 options here or that you prioritize in rank order as to what you want us to pursue and start designing.
Right. Although I will say this, there's if you look at the monies available there, if we went all in on what we've shown you the different options are, there's no gap. There's very little gap. The money available will just about cover everything there that we could do in the 5 priorities. And then that decision's yours. I will say this, and I've said it before, and I guess it's kind of a pep talk, a rah-rah talk, the emotional part of it. But, this is an opportunity to use these ARPA dollars and see them last long-term, like Nathan just alluded to. And I'm talking 60, 70 years down the road if we did all 5 options. We'll see the return on this. The full-size gym gives us a revenue enhancement opportunity to help with ongoing operational cost. It's my opinion is let's not stop the game in the 7th inning. Let's play 9 innings. Let's play 4 quarters. This can be an incredible enhancement to our south end. We are doing things all over this city. We're doing things on the east end. We're doing things in the middle. And this is an opportunity to bring Middletown together, not just southeast, northwest, because we want all of Middletown to use this facility. I hear a lot how great Hamilton's doing and all the stuff they're doing. That's because they play 9 innings. They go the 4 quarters. We need to do the same thing. Yes, it's a risk, but this is a benefit to our citizens of how we're spending the ARPA dollars for years and years and years to come. Yes, we need to do things such as feed the homeless and do help towards social service agencies, but a lot of times when we throw money at that stuff, we give them money and it's done in 3 months, it's gone. This money will be here for 30, 40, 50, 60 years if we do a project such as this. However, we have to make a determination if collectively, if that's what we need to do and want to do.
Kind of a baseline question. We had a $12 million project bid. Is there any concern that if we rebid this or we don't have to rebid this, that maybe the contractors will not come back because the scope has changed so dramatically?
No, I think what we learned is actually our recommendation to you, council, would be is that we would do what we're doing on the fire stations. We would do a construction manager at risk arrangement. I think our recent bidding on this project, kind of, and some of the feedback we got from folks that were interested but decided not to ultimately throw a bid, is that they were a little more concerned about holding their subs for that long on pricing and schedule. The construction manager at risk arrangement would allow them to kind of schedule those folks at their own risk as the project evolves. So you're not having to, for instance, let's say your HVAC sub may not be, it may be, let's say, a 10-month build. They may not even be showing up till month 5 of a project. Well, you're asking them for that first 5 months to hold price, to hold schedule for you, because you got to know when you bid. Now they have a little bit more time on the fly. They're taking that risk because they got to find subs to do the work within the budget they're given, but it allows them a little more flexibility. So I think that's what the road that we would recommend we go down instead of just doing kind of the vanilla base design bid arrangement we did the last time.
Options 2 and 5,
Mm-hmm.
are they actually adding any space to the building or just renovating existing space?
So the family zone area would actually provide what I'll say is functional space. You can kind of look at it as, is it currently under roof? Yes. Is it really utilized for much in terms of anything value added? That's debatable. And then item 5, which is the renovation would not add square footage. I think in coordination with CBI, we would see the addition of more functional space, because you can see some of that space is chopped up in a lot of little offices. Some of that renovation scope would most likely be knocking out some non-load bearing walls to make for bigger rooms, to allow for more instructional space, more meeting space and the like for
I think
patrons.
without, like, if we don't do the gym, to me, it sounds like we're not giving them the number one thing that's being asked, which is more space.
Yes, ma'am.
By doing the gym, are we getting the extra space that we need, Relina? I mean, is that? Because if we, so I'm just, okay, say we did the gym, we cut out the $500,000 to renovate the existing gym, that would put the need at 6.1 million total. Is that all in, like construction, like design costs?
There's going to
and
be
all
some,
that?
we're negotiating on the back end some design costs. I'm beating up Phil's boss on a weekly basis, but I think we're in that ballpark, Your Honor. I think what we may do is maybe have a couple of these as an ad alternate, like the upstairs gym. We may find pricing and magically all in, hey, it's close enough to where you're comfortable doing it. And we can probably look at the exterior improvements as well as an ad alternate. That way we get pricing. If it falls within the budget, so be it. If not, that's a future capital consideration years to come.
I like the exteriors because we need to have, like, I feel like we need the pride. It needs to look nice. It needs to make
Warm and
people
inviting.
feel good.
Yeah.
And also, if I hear sunroof, I mean, just daylight coming in a building is really important, and it can change the whole mood of everyone. So I see that as being important if we're going to do all this. But I would strike the existing gym improvements. The space is still usable. And at 6.1, if we kept our 2.6 million as a city, the 1.5 the county, 300,000 the state capital budget, and then if we pulled 1.6 from the 2 million that the county,
But we might have 300 from the community foundation.
well, and I was going to pull 100 from community foundation, knowing that a lot of that still is programming, and we don't want to pull all programming money either. I'm saying in theory, that would still leave us with 400,000 from the county money, which is still something to put towards other programs, because I know there's other needs out there and other desires of different groups, and I don't want to discount that either. And then this community foundation would still have money for programming. We could do it.
That's pretty much where I am. That's how I had it laid out. And I was just thinking like the exterior, and that's why I was asking what the definition is.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, maybe I'll put that aside, but I mean, how do you put $5 million into something and then leave the outside without improving it? That's where I am. I would support that. I would just add, and I'm gonna say the dreaded word here, of fundraising. I think it's one thing to be able to say, we are doing this. It is going to get done no matter what. And then you leave potentially that out there, and maybe there is a private donor that wants to say, hey, we're gonna do that last thing, we're gonna throw it over the top. Because then we know we have a project, we know we have shovels in the ground, we know there is a project that is going to happen, whereas before it was, how are we gonna get to 10 or 12 million? And there was a lot of questions, is the project even gonna happen? So donors weren't coming. Whereas now we're saying it is happening. If you wanna do something, this is the one thing you can do.
I mean, the reality is, it's going to go over budget. I don't know.
No, I'm being
I
optimist.
can't say yes to this without knowing. Like, it's just,
I know.
I know that's going to happen. So even with that, we are like, we're not gonna, we're still gonna have a shortfall. I know it. It's gonna come up. There's gonna be stuff. There's also, I'm sure, interior finishings that aren't gonna be in this that are gonna come up. So fundraising, I see it for absolutely getting that last part over the finish line. And also, if we did happen to have plenty, then we sure could use more programming money. I'm certain that there's never enough of that. I would imagine you guys would agree with that. So I also agree.
And I very much envision us continue to seek the fundraising with Stephen's help and looking at what other grants may get us.
The inclusion of that gym helps in that regards, I believe, in terms of some fundraising.
But just so there's no confusion, we would not be fundraising to finish a project, we would be fundraising to improve an already existing.
Right.
Yes.
I
Correct.
think
Big
that's
whipped
an
cream and
Yes.
cherry on
I-
top,
yeah.
yes.
I guess on my end, I talked to Councilman Meterspaw earlier, and I don't want to speak for him, but he told me to relay his thoughts, and I'm of the same mind. If we can get this project to come together, I'm fine with leaving the 2.1 originally committed. I don't really want to commit the extra $500,000 if we don't have to. To your point, Mayor, or Tal, one or the other, you said that you use 1.6 of the $2 million of the new money the county's given us. So that money is going to be specifically earmarked for certain things, which isn't always bad. However, if we could use that total $2 million and keep money on the other end that we can be more flexible with, I think that's the more strategic approach in my mind. So I'm okay. I mean, obviously, I've been on this board from day one. I want to see this thing happen. I just want to make sure I hate to be the guy that's, we've got infrastructure dollars going everywhere right now, but to keep this sustainable long-term, the city has to continue to make money, right? So we have to make sure this highway project goes well so we have more money. So I'm a proponent of it. On my end, I think we can make the numbers work probably to where we can keep that extra $500,000. And then at that point, I definitely, if we can figure out a way to do that, to the mayor's point, if we can, in real estate terms, commercial real estate, we call that, if we can white box the old gym to where it's just saved and it's set up for future date. If there's ways to do things like that to where it's 200,000 versus 500, I'm open to that.
Are you saying, no, sorry, I'm confused. Where's the rest of the money going to come from if we only do the 2.1 ARPA?
So we are at 6.6 if we did everything, the whole thing, correct?
Yep, that's the full money.
Yep.
Okay, and if we did everything, including the 500,000 extra,
You were at 6.4.
6.4?
Yeah.
So if we can cut that 500,000 there, we're within the range of where we need to be by, say, 100,000, if I'm not mistaken, or am I wrong about that?
And you're also saying
close, yes.
to use the dollars, all of the dollars from the county, instead of saving some of those dollars from the county.
Right, correct.
Okay, so you're basically saying, so use all the county's new 2 million
Yeah, just
and not the
Not the
$500,000.
additional funds that
free that up so that money is more flexible, which gives us more options long term.
Sure, yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, I think
Not that obviously I want to use to help people, but if we can have money earmarked and money not earmarked to where we're restricted, I think that gives the city more flexibility, which is where we want to be.
Yeah, that's fair.
I also like the idea of using all of that money that I'm sure that they knew we needed for this project, and they committed to the city for these types of
Right.
improvements fully on this project.
Yep.
And Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, we still have some bit of ARPA dollars that are uncommitted or unencumbered, correct?
We do. We do have,
A few $100,000.
we actually.
But we don't need to go, I'm
million
kind
plus,
of
yeah.
trying to go the other way with that personally. To
Yeah.
me,
Right.
Right,
Right.
only use the 2.1.
I just hate to see, just because there's money to be thrown at something, that we throw money at it. And I'm not saying that this is that project, but I like projects that say A plus B equals C. If we invest this money, this is the return. This is obviously an investment in people, so you can't get that back dollar per dollar. We all know that. But I know what the government does, right? I'm a part of the government now, so I can say it, I think. But you build a building and everything's fixed, and that's not the way I want to see programming in here. I want the things that Verlena's doing. I think that's why I do think the fundraising personally, to me, long term, should go towards that, because we have to make this sustainable. It's not today or tomorrow.
Right.
Well, I guess
Agreed.
tomorrow, future. Yeah.
So I think where staff's at, hearing you folks, direction you've given this afternoon is we will huddle with Brandstetter. We will have a little bit of a discussion on the outstanding contract we have with them. And we'll be bringing a supplemental appropriation measure your way before the end of the year, to where we get that all taken care of. In talking with Brandstetter, we're probably on track after we've given our marching orders this evening. We're on track to our goal is to bid this out in probably February is where we're at. We have some rework to do on the plans, but nothing Herculean. I say that without looking Phil in the eye, but that's where we're at.
I'd like to get it going. I feel like it's been
We will.
so long.
it has.
Yep.
I know everybody's tired of the planning, and the sooner we can get moving, the better for the community and probably for the price point of the project too. I think it's exciting.
It is very.
I mean, hopefully. And I appreciate everyone's patience with it. I know there's a lot of people that have been through a roller coaster of emotions on this project, so thank you for your resilience. Do we have more discussions that staff wanted to have about senior center at this time?
Yeah.
Does anyone have questions up here about senior center while we're on the topic? And oh, I had actually a
If we
question.
wanted to, the agenda does allow us to talk about the senior center and what sort of the future plans are for those. If you've got an update for us on the senior center.
So
I think
essentially,
Can I ask one real quick question on the community center before we shift? Are the schools still busing?
we did have some conversation with them in regards to that, and they are still interested in fulfilling that,
Okay.
that promise commitment.
Okay, that's great.
Yes.
Thank you.
So with the Senior Citizen Center community or Central Connections, we officially closed last Thursday, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday, and it's my understanding that everything's been recorded. We're having a meeting with them tomorrow morning with the board on how we're going to play this out going out. And then the plan is this. I can tell you that, you know, the end game is to get the city out of there. And by that, I don't mean that's a bad thing. I just mean if we can get somebody in there to run that where there's revenue enhancement and it's run as a facility like that should be run, that's a great thing for the city. So we are convening a group of business people in town, community people from all areas of use of the center who have used it, and we're going to sit down and discuss over a few weeks what are some visions out there. And then from that, I envision probably what's going to happen, I see, is we put some type of a RFP out there on here are the perimeters. What can you do for us in meeting these goals and objectives and perimeters that we've set forth? I know that sounds very simple right now, but I think it'll get fairly complex once we sit down with, once again, business leaders, those individuals who know how to run facilities and operations such as this.
So-
Does that help?
So Paul, if I repeat it back so I can understand it myself, short-term RFP for somebody to manage it on behalf of the city owning it.
Well, that would be long-term.
Okay.
That would be long-term. We'll continue in the short term to operate
Okay.
it.
And then longer-term, getting out of the ownership entirely with some sort of reverse.
Getting out of either the operation of it or entirely out of ownership and operating if we get the right RFP.
To be determined, but that's
that essentially recovers our
possible.
initial investment.
But what we would be seeking is maybe an already established organization who could come in.
Yes.
And utilize the space and provide the services
Correct.
that we're looking for our seniors, but who would come in and,
Our seniors
Essentially
and
take
other events, because we understand that, listen, just running a senior citizen center there probably is not going to give us much in the way of revenue enhancement. It's going to have to be some type of an operation that has revenue enhancement to it and a place where our seniors can go receive mission-critical services, which includes congregation and socialization.
I feel like we're headed down the path of general fund subsidies permanently on the facility.
And once again, that's what we want to avoid.
Because my message would be to anyone, if you're interested in buying this facility and running something, we're open to selling it. The goal isn't, for,
At the end of the day, that's what may come
Yeah.
out of it. But once again,
because
we
that
want
was
to
their,
see what's
that was what we
the
planned,
best way
right?
for the
We all
city to
agreed
do
this
that.
With that.
I don't think I ever bought this with plans that somebody's gonna come along and run a nonprofit and then buy the building off of us.
Well, we definitely didn't plan to own the building long-term.
No, we didn't, but I
That
don't
is
think we
correct.
ever planned to.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's coming along paying market value for that and gonna run.
I'm just saying,
But
if
we
someone
want,
has interest,
we want to
sooner the
keep
better.
from happening what's happened in the past, in the last 2 years. We want to keep that from happening, but at the same cost. You bring up a very valid point. We do not want this to become a city subsidy that's costing us a lot of money. That's why we
Right,
are,
'cause we didn't
that's
have
why
any
we are
budget.
involving business people in
Right.
town who have experience at these types of operations.
I guess the challenge I see is that it's part event center and part senior center. And it's difficult to be both because it's a really big space. And senior centers can exist and be successful on their own, smaller facilities maybe that are run through nonprofits. But this facility is very large. It's an event center. And it's got a kitchen and a event center space. Like that, and I think that's the real challenge that we
Right.
encounter, is that this would require almost two separate businesses to be operating under the same roof. And there aren't a lot of existing nonprofit groups or groups that do what we're asking for. So I think that's going to be the challenge for us moving forward in what we do with this space. Because event centers are very difficult businesses to run.
Yep.
The senior center part of it is it seems pretty straightforward to me, but the event center part of it, as a restaurant owner, I'm telling you, is the hard part. That's the hard part. And I think that's where they started to go downhill.
But then I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know more about this than I do, but it's probably hard to, as a city, whether we own it or lease it or whatever, it's hard for us to break even if it's only a senior center at the scale of what it is. So it is difficult to find the right person to run it.
I mean, is it even realistic that the senior center was operating in a different building before this. Is there a better space for the senior center to operate in a smaller facility and this building be sold for another?
As an event center or as another
Right, now I know that
intended
there's deed
purpose.
restrictions, that it be used for community, I can't remember the exact verbiage
Is
from
it institutional?
AK.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Basically
there are
school
some,
or church.
there are some guardrails on that. But I think you folks hit the nail on the head, is that we have one facility that kind of has one or more personalities. In that, yes, there's kind of the senior center side of it, but then we also have this event space. And that's one of our primary drivers, I think, as the city manager alluded to, is we're looking at ways to where we understand as a city we're going to be a landlord to somebody for at least the midterm. We know that. It's just reality, unfortunately. But on the food and bev side of things, Ms. Thomas is right. That's not a glamorous, easy business. You have to slog it out. On the other hand, though, I think we have the benefit of not trying to run a restaurant there. I don't think that's our plan or our suggestion going forward, is that we're going to have drop-in lunch service or dinner meals or whatnot. But it's going to be for events, it's going to be for receptions and, you know, weddings and those kinds of things, at least initially, if we can find a third-party operator. The one good thing about that food and bev operation is that you can control your labor costs, you know what your food waste costs are, and you can price that in ahead of time without the more of the day-to-day or week-to-week risk of running a you know, on-demand, you know, what we'd say is a restaurant service. So more to come on that.
Any other comments, thoughts?
No, I definitely would be interested to find out what staff would come up with as alternatives for what we can do with the senior center, where, you know, is this the best location? Do a real analysis on what we do with our senior center, and is this the right place for it long-term before we make any kind of big investments in staff and programming and all of these things at a senior center that maybe doesn't look like the senior center that we need.
The only problem I see with that, and I definitely can't be wrong, just my opinion, is to buy or to build or to renovate right now is so pricey. What we pay for the building, 1.8 off the top of my head? I mean, you can build a house for 1.8 right now, 2,000 square foot. You know, you can't recreate what that is or even close to it. So I think that's going to be, and then we go to sell a property which is so restricted, you're not going to get market value for what it's actually worth. I think that's just going to be difficult in my
I
mind.
think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. I think we need to put out the RFP.
No, I agree completely.
Even
That's what I'm
see
saying,
What
yeah.
the interest is, and that's going to be a couple months down the road, and Zach's going to have to deal with it, so.
Yeah, good luck with that, Zach.
Thanks.
I mean, from a legal perspective, though, I mean, have we looked into those deed restrictions and where we can go with that? Is there any, you know, is there any leeway, or is that just we're stuck?
So I haven't looked intimately close at it. It was part of obviously the due diligence. We were kind of moving, not quickly to be careless, but it was certainly something we're cognizant of it, know about it, and, you know, if and when we figure out some sort of idea, we can look in analysis of the deed restrictions and move on from there.
Yeah, I knew we knew what we were getting ourselves into, but I didn't know if we had taken that extra step to say, how do we get ourselves out of that situation, if that was what we were looking to do.
I know when they tried to sell the land in back of the property, that's why they took it off the market, was because they were so restricted, and there was literally no legal way around it, from what I understand.
Was it even zoned residential, though?
No.
No,
I don't.
it was still
wasn't.
zoned.
But they thought, from what I understand, I definitely could be wrong, but they thought they were going to have the ability to change the zoning, and then they said they couldn't, which, I mean, that's one person.
Because of the deed restriction.
Correct.
But the city being the property owner and having maybe a little bit more control over changing those kind of things, I don't.
Maybe not necessarily changing it, you just can't build residential there. That doesn't mean there's not something else that could be built there.
Not residential, but some other intended use, like a business use, as opposed to an institutional use.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Well, with that, we will adjourn our special meeting, and we will reconvene at 5:30, take a break for our normal council meeting.